Kimberly, come in. Are you okay?
Welcome to RetroGaming Radio. I'm Shane Armandale, your host, comprehensive online. I'm Shane Armandale, your host. Welcome to RetroGaming Radio, comprehensive online. I'm Shane Armandale, your host. Welcome to the program. Hello, folks, and welcome to Retro Gaming Radio, your comprehensive online source of all things of a classic gaming nature. I'm Shane Armandale, your host. Welcome to our program. We've been in a year and a half on hiatus for the Retro Gaming Radio. We're back by popular demand. We've received so many letters saying how much you like the show and wish we'd bring the show back. Your letters have been answered, because here we are. We also have some very exciting things in the pipeline, which also enable us to bring the show back, along with some generous mirrors offered by some of our longtime listeners and friends out there. We really appreciate them hooking us up with mirror space so that you get to get the show. As you'll notice, the show is now in QuickTime 5 format, which I'm sure is going to raise some ruckus. But QuickTime 5 actually solves a lot of problems with the show in terms of streaming, compatibility, etc. So we're going to go ahead and continue the shows in QuickTime format, and the MP3 versions of the archives will continue, which means in about a week or so you'll be able to get the whole show in MP3 only format. Of course, you'll miss out on any video and imagery that we present to you. We have a lot of exciting things planned. The rest of the year is just seething with good stuff. Interviews, product reviews, of course, the standard editorials. We've got new flashbacks planned for you. And for those of you who are new to Retro Gaming Radio, we want to welcome you specifically if this is your first episode. We've been around quite a while. We've had a lot of fun in the past, and I'm hoping we can rekindle that fun for this episode and future episodes of Retro Gaming Radio. Maybe even some of you remember the old days when it was just Retro Radio. And if you listen to some old episodes, you'll find out why we changed the name. In any event, we have quite a bit to get to today, so let's move along with the show. Today's show will include an editorial commentary by yours truly, Shane Armandale. We're going to cover the Classic Gaming Expo held in Las Vegas, Nevada this last month. You're going to really enjoy that coverage. We're going to do a product review on Time Traveler. Remember the old hologram game from Sega way back when, the Holoceum? That's compliments of Digital Leisure. We're going to give you that product review. And we're going to take a preview at the new Dragon's Lair movie. That's right, a full motion picture of Dragon's Lair the movie is coming soon, and we've got some nice juicy details for you right here on Retro Gaming Radio. And we're going to tease you a little bit about what's coming forth, so you're going to have to listen to the show to find out what's coming up next. Our editorial commentary this episode is on the death of Dreamcast, the fall of a generation. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Shane, the Dreamcast just got discontinued. It's hardly retro. But what happened to Dreamcast is quite representative to what has happened often in classic retro gaming, which is why I want to talk about it. Dreamcast had the unusual ability to produce some very original games. I talk about things like Crazy Taxi, Jet Grind Radio, some very, very classic, non-traditional, non-mainstream games. But what made these games unique also made them great. I frankly think that Crazy Taxi is probably one of the most brilliant games ever made. Those of you in the Commodore 64 background will remember a little game called Space Taxi. Now, Space Taxi was just like Crazy Taxi, only it was 8-bit, of course, and it wasn't in 3D. But if you remember the game, follow me on this one. There were like 9 pads on the screen, and you had this little hover taxi. And you'd fly from pad to pad, picking up these little guys that would call out to you. Remember, it was that really cheesy speech synthesis on the C64. The little guy would be like, "Hey, taxi." And then you'd fly over there and you'd land, he'd get in, and he'd say, "Pad 2, please." And then you'd fly over there, you'd drop him off, and thanks. And he'd get out, and you'd go pick up the next guy. Well, isn't that not what Crazy Taxi really is all about? Yeah, it's 3D, and there's some, there's hazards in the way. But if you look at it at its barest essence, is it not Space Taxi? Well, sure it is. A lot of Dreamcast's originality float back to the 8-bit days where games were originally made to be fun, not beautiful, not multicolored volumetric fog with 5-to-1 surround sound, but games that challenged the imagination of the gamers, not the gamers' hardware. The Dreamcast leaving the scene is actually really sad. It was probably what I would consider the last great console. I've looked at the PS2, I've looked at the GameCube, I've looked at the Xbox. None of them have a soul like the Dreamcast had. Of course, the Dreamcast is getting a second life in emulation. As you know, Dreamcast can play MAME, it can play ColecoVision games, it can play Atari 2600 games. I think there's even a C64 emulator in the works. So all of the things that Dreamcast wasn't to the community can still be to those of us who loved it. It's very, very common in the past, the way that marketing versus might ends up happening. And we're not talking about one or two different scenarios. We're talking a lot of them. Let's look at, say, the technologically advanced Amiga computer or the Atari ST. Take your pick. I know I've got ST listeners. Look at that versus the PC of the day. Amiga, Atari ST, 4,096 colors, 4-channel stereo sound, beautiful graphics, immense multimedia capabilities, just totally brilliant. Then you look at the PC of the time, 486, CGE, CGA graphics, PC speaker beeps, Not exactly a multimedia powerhouse, but what ended up winning in the end? The PC did. You don't see Amigas and Atari STs around anymore, even though they were probably some of the best computers ever made. Look, for example, at the Lynx versus the Game Boy. The Atari Lynx, probably one of the coolest handhelds ever, so advanced for its time, tons of different hardware effects, dead-on arcade conversions right from the games, against the little tiny screen, non-backlit, black and white Game Boy. Technologically, the Lynx should have stomped the Game Boy's butt into the ground, but as per usual, it's all about marketing. Now, Atari didn't have a good marketing budget, nor did Commodore for the Amiga, and Atari for the ST didn't even really have a very good budget. It matters not how powerful a computer is, no matter how powerful a game system is. There are people right now that will debate that the Dreamcast is still a more powerful machine than the PlayStation 2. Of course. But that has nothing to do with it. It's all about marketing. That's why Nintendo manages to keep spinning the same games and the same games over and over and over again. It's all about marketing. Own the children, you'll own the market. Nintendo's really good at that. Sony knows through brute force that they can put a console into the environment, and even though 90% of the games are total crap, they sell. There you go. It's all about marketing versus might, which is really too bad. The Dreamcast showed the last sign of original intelligent games. And now that Sega's developing software for other systems, maybe those other systems will start to see some of these really cool original games. But just remember, these great games that you play every day, like Crazy Taxi, 10-to-1, they hail back to a better time of gaming. Rest in peace, Dreamcast. We will miss you. Let's talk about the Classic Gaming Expo, which took place in August in Las Vegas, Nevada. Now, those of you who've been to CGE, the Classic Gaming Expo, know exactly what I'm talking about. This is the definitive show for anybody who's listening to this radio show right now. If you are a retro gamer, if you're into the old 2600 games, if you're into ColecoVision and television, if you know what barnstorming and Pitfall are, this is the show you should be attending. The show goes for 2 days over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. And believe me, it's amazing. It's basically E3 for the geek gamers. Now, it's not as big as E3. I'm not going to lead you on. Those of you who've been there know that it's a relatively small show. But after going to E3 last year and being completely disappointed because I didn't have a press pass, since nobody got to do or see anything that didn't have a press pass, I'm not personally going to go to E3 next year. I'm out of the running for that. Instead, I'm going to focus all my time at CGE. In fact, if I have my way about it, RetroGaming Radio is going to have a booth right there at CGE where you can actually listen to old episodes off a laptop with headphones. And, you'll be able to buy the RetroGaming Radio CD-ROM and all that other good stuff. You'll be able to just come and hang out. It'll be really cool. This is story time, because CGE was definitely an interesting trip. Now, I live here in Phoenix, Arizona, as most of you already know. So Vegas is a 5-6 hour trip for us. My friend Brian King, who I'm going to give him a plug here, makes the very cool product called Cart Commander. It is a database program designed to track all of your console games, your cartridges, Atari 2600, ColecoVision, Lynx, NES, whatever. You can actually track your cartridges, print out lists, HTMLize, whatever, and keep track of your collection. Know how many copies you've got of each cart, so you know what to trade when you go to CGE. Fantastic product. Go to arcaderestoration.com. His name's Brian King, good friend of mine, and we rode up together in the car. Yeah, see, I managed to segue right in and get to that plug. You gotta love that. Brian drove up there, and actually the route on the way up was a lot of construction work. Well, you know how it is. You get in a hurry, you get behind a couple of trucks. As soon as you get clear, you take off like a demon. Well, we come up over the hill. Sure enough, there's a cop right on the side of the road. He's standing in the middle of the road waving us over to the side. So we pull over, and he comes up, and he's like, so, license registration. Of course, Brian's registration wasn't in his car. He had his temp registration, but didn't know where his regular registration was. To add it to all that, here's what I got. And he's like, well, do you know how fast you were going? Brian's like, well, probably 60, 65, something like that. The cop said, no, you were going 75. Oh! And do you know what the speed limit is through here? And Brian's like, last sign I saw was 50, sir. So he was doing like 25 over. Well, fortunately, the cop, and this is a great testament, I must look really needy. Great, He looks over at me and he says, you see your friend over there? He sure does look hungry. Yeah, great. Yeah, start passing the fat jokes, Grandpa. He sure looks hungry. Now you're going to have to buy him dinner for making him stop here and, talk to me. And I just started laughing. I thought that was so funny. And he's like, yes, sir, I'll get him dinner. You got my word on that one. And he's like, well, you do know that traffic fines are doubled, blah, 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 blah. They go through this whole thing, and then he looks over at my friend Ron Corcoran. If you know Ron Corcoran, he runs Snipercade, a big affiliation with Twin Galaxies. He and his family were in the other car tailing behind us, and he pulled over too. And the police officer says, are those guys in the car, with you? He's like, yeah, they're traveling with us. And he's like, well, now you got to buy them dinner too. And he looks in over me. He's like, son, you'll take care of that for me, won't you? Make sure he gets them dinner. I said, you bet you, sir. I'll take care of that. Well, as it turns out, Brian got off with a warning. Naturally, we did 50 most of the rest of the way to Vegas. So it took us a little bit longer. But we got there, and I'd never really been to Vegas per se. We stayed at the Plaza Hotel, which is where you want to stay. Trust me. Get a room now if you have to. That's where you want to stay if you're going to CGE, because it's right in their conference rooms. So we get there, and Ron Corcoran and family are all invited to this alumni dinner. Myself and, actually Brian with me was able to go. I myself did not have a pass to go to that event. But Brian Smith, I know there's like 5 Brians in my life. Brian Smith, Kid Hype, if you know him from Classic Gaming circles, he did some really cool games like Eat and Run. You may have heard of that. Anyway, he's a member of Dark Unicorn Productions along with a bunch of us other ones. He came up to the show and he met us, so he and I got to hang out while we were waiting for Ron and everybody to finish the alumni dinner. Well, when we got there, Brian hadn't showed up yet. In fact, he showed up a couple hours later. Ron took me in to see CGE being set up. It's so cool. They're wheeling in these classic games that you haven't seen forever, like Us versus Them and Circus Atari, You're sitting there going, whoa, I haven't seen these things forever. None of them are turned on. They're all like waiting for power. But you see these people setting up booths, taking out these racks of Atari Lynx cartridges, and your eyes just get kind of big, and you're looking around going, ooh, I could spend so much money and time here. But since Ron's a member of Twin Galaxies, the Twin Galaxies family, he managed to score me my pass early, which was cool. We got to walk around. Again, nothing was on, but sure enough, there were Dragon's Lair and Space Ace machines, so I was just totally thrilled. Anyway, so Brian finally showed up, and he and I got to hang out while the other guys went to the alumni dinner. Well, we were deciding what we were going to do to go eat, and we walked by where the alumni dinner was, and Ron's like, you'll never believe who's in here. And I said, oh, do I even want to know? He's like, yes. Don Bluth is in here. Don Bluth, Rick Dyer, Gary Goldman, John Pomeroy, they're all in here right now. I'm like going, oh, man, are you serious? Now, you guys know what a Don Bluth freak I am. So he's like, I'm going to get you in. I'm going to get you in. So he goes and he talks to the guy. and says, you got to let my friend in. He's got to meet Don Bluth. He's got to meet Don Bluth. So I go in, and I am faced with the four idols of my day. Don Bluth, the man behind The Secret of Nim, the man behind Dragon's Lair, Space Ace, Don Bluth, the miracle worker, Don Bluth, the magic man. I was actually in his presence, and if you can imagine, me with the guy that always has something to say, I was totally speechless. And I started bubbling like a little schoolgirl. Oh, Don, I'm a big fan. Oh, Don, you're the greatest. Don, I love Secret of Nim. Blah, blah, blah. And I just couldn't shut up. And I said, maybe I better stop while I'm ahead. And he's like, no, you're doing good. Here, let's get a picture. Let's pretend like we know each other. And he puts his arm around me. I put my arm around him, and Ron takes a picture. And it was like the perfect moment. I got to ask him the eternal questions that I've always wanted to know. I got to meet Gary Goldman, which is Don Bluth's right-hand man. Amazing. And I got to meet John Pomeroy, which is one of the lead animators on Atlantis. He still works for Disney. And Rick Dyer, the magic man, the man behind the hardware, the man behind the forthcoming Dragon's Lair 3D, the man behind our review this time, Time Traveler. I got to meet them all. So I went back to Brian. Poor Brian didn't get to go in and meet Don. I was like, because he's a big Don Bluth fan too, and he was just sitting out there waiting for him. I'm like, did you get him? He just left. Did you grab him on the way out? He's like, no, I didn't see him. I'm like, ah. So I'm sitting here like just like a schoolgirl in love, walking around all stupid the rest of the night, and thinking about how cool it's going to be. And of course, Brian and I sat up in the hotel room, talked, and coded on video games and all sorts of other crap until like 3 in the morning. We didn't get any sleep at all. But the next day, let's talk about day one. All right, enough of the story stuff. Let's get on with what CGE was really like. Day one, wow, it's so cool. All of them were running then. All the things were flipped on. All the sounds. There's something about an arcade when you walk into it and you hear the sounds. The sounds of Dirk screaming in the background. The sounds from Mappy, the sounds from Bubbles and Robotron, all mingling together. If you don't get what I mean, you'll never understand what I'm talking about. But those of you who are from my generation just know exactly what I'm talking about. I walked in and it's like coming home. Home when there's a lot of stands selling cool stuff. So we're walking around. I'm looking at all these. First thing I did was play Space Ace. Had to play Space Ace. Got my ass royally kicked. But that's what happens when you haven't played Space Ace in, 10 years. So we're walking around looking at all the games. Now, those of you who know anything about CGE, they have keynote speeches where they get all these famous people together, people who program the 2600 games you spent days playing as a kid, people who were in the industry, in the business, like Don Bluth. They got all these people, and they give speeches, and they answer questions. And Ron Corcoran was running the tournaments, so he didn't get a chance to go to a lot of them. So he said, will you please go and videotape the 2600, the Atari 2600 programmers meeting? And let me tell you who was there, folks. I will tell you some of the greatest names of 2600 were in there. The guy that worked for Imagic, that made Demon Attack, that made Cosmic Arc, the guy that coded Defender on the 2600. These guys were all there answering questions, just shooting the breeze like a bunch of regular guys. Half of them don't even code anymore. So we're sitting there shooting the breeze, talking about how they exploited the crap out of Atari 2600 hardware, how they managed to get more crap on the screen. Demon Attack, that cool Starfield in Demon Attack was actually, this is a cool story, so I have to share this one. The Starfield was actually a throwback from Missile Command. They were trying to figure out how they could get more missiles coming down in Missile Command on the 2600. Well, eventually they got to a point where all of a sudden, instead of showing these dropping missiles, it started flickering in all these colors. It looked like a Starfield. So they cut the code out and they stuck it somewhere because basically they built Demon Attack around that Starfield code. Totally wacky. But, these are the sort of stories that they share, and you just sit, entranced. These guys are just the regular guys, and you're sitting here listening to the stories, the crap that went on behind the scenes is amazing. Well, once we got done with that, and I recorded the whole show for Ron on tape, next year, bring a tripod. You can tell my horrible handy cam work. But anyway, so after we did that, we went ahead and we played some more games, played tons and tons of games. Then, here's the good part. Don Bluth, Rick Dyer, all four of them got together and they presented a 2-hour keynote speech. They talked about all sorts of great stuff, and I'm going to actually play a clip for you right here of Dawn giving some wisdom about Dragon's Lair. So check out your screen right now.
As much thought as I did over doing it. It was just fun. And the animators, we just turned it loose and said, you guys, just have fun with us a lot, make you do all kinds of things and make it comedic and make it funny. And that's when we happened on the death note. And a death note is a little note, is something that you access on the laser where it says, if you failed, here's how you die. And the deaths, we said, we'll make them fun. We started making them gory so that they were kind of gay. But then we said, no, we can have a lot of fun. So we wound up doing that. And for me, the fun of the game was trying to see all the different ways you could make your guy and be happy about it.
Now, after we got done with Dawn and Party, Rick Dyer actually got up and showed us a first-hand look at Dragon's Lair 3D. Now, you can bet we're going to have a full review of Dragon's Lair 3D on this show, and we're going to bring you some exclusive stuff. In fact, if you're watching your screen right now, we're probably throwing some pictures by you right now, depends on what we get around to doing, of Dragon's Lair 3D in progress. Now, these are captured off of video camera, so they're not great pictures, but at least there's something for you to see. We'll probably even throw in a video clip of Dragon's Lair 3D being played. In fact, let's go ahead and show you that right now.
Here we are in the burning rope room in Clicktown, Willie notice. We don't have the uh-oh yet, but there you can see the ropes are burning up. And
now, Dragon's Lair 3D, we're not going to talk a lot about because we're going to have a big portion of the show down the road dedicated to Dragon's Lair 3D. But suffice to say, it's very, very cool. It's like Dragon's Lair meets Tomb Raider. Even if you're not a big Tomb Raider fan, I think you're going to have a good time with this. Now, once all is said and done, we actually got to see part of the storyboards. We got to see actual storyboard sketches of the new Dragon's Lair movie. That's right, a full-length animated motion picture of Dragon's Lair the movie. And we are, in fact, going to talk more about the Dragon's Lair movie here in just a little while later on in the show. I don't want to give too much away, but it's very exciting stuff. We actually got to see new Dragon's Lair footage, the first cartooning, the first animation that Don Bluth, Gary Goldman, and Party have all done in the last 20 years. Brand new footage of Dirk, the Dragon Singe, Daphne, the whole ball of wax. It's very, very exciting, and you will see that on the forthcoming Dragon's Lair 3D. But let's move along. We've got so much here to cover. Once the keynote speech was done, all four of them sat down at CGE and were signing Space Ace and Dragon's Lair posters. Now, I brought my own Space Ace poster, but they actually had some there for sale. And those of you who were there understand what it was like to stand in front of all of these guys and have them sign your poster. And I will actually show you pictures of these signed posters here while we're talking in the background. I'll show you some pictures of my signed poster. You won't be able to probably see them very good because the QuickTime window is really small. But I actually got my Space Ace poster completely framed, matted, the whole ball of wax. It belongs in a museum. You hardly ever see these four guys all together, let alone signing your poster for you. Don Bluth, one of the most generous, nicest guys I've ever met. I'm so glad, because I would have been crushed to find out he was, one of the Hollywoodite type people, and I was so glad he wasn't. They were all cool. John Pomeroy sat down, yapped with me about Atlantis. Gary Goldman, the guy looks like your favorite uncle. That's every time I see Gary Goldman, I think favorite uncle. It's like, hey, it's Uncle Gary. Hey, come hang out with us. Let's barbecue. And of course, Rick Dyer. What do you say to or with Rick Dyer? It's just like standing in the presence of a genius. What can you do? What can you do? So we had this big autograph session. We hung out. We talked, and then they were running tournaments for video games. They released Elevator Action for the 2600. They released Combat 2, and they had this Russian guy showed up, and he had a brand new 2600 game he coded. It was a lot of fun. They ran tournaments, and they had a whole wall of video games that they were running a best cumulative score game tournament on. It was a blast. I mean, if you weren't there to play the video games, if you weren't there to buy the cool stuff, And I'm going to talk about that when I talk about day 2. If you weren't there for that, then you have the tournaments to fall back on. So suffice to say, at the end of day 1, it was totally exhausting. We were just totally worn out. And again, we stayed up till like 2 a.m. programming video games. But what can you do? Day 2, we actually got to do some shopping. Now, there's stuff here for sale that you haven't seen in decades. We're talking like the Atari Supercharger. We're talking about old classic handheld games you never thought you'd see, like the Tony Blip. You remember that? They had Atari cartridges. They had Intellivision cartridges, 2600 cartridges. They had it all, you know, and you're sitting here thinking to yourself, man, this is it. This is classic gaming geek paradise. It doesn't get any better than this. I walked off with like $60 worth of Lynx cartridges, a bunch of stuff that I hadn't had yet. It's hard to find stuff, rare stuff. Fantastic. Just about anything you wanted to buy. They had a Fairchild Channel F there that you could buy. Totally awesome. The second day also saw more tournaments, so we actually got to participate in a couple of tournaments on the second day. I finally beat Space Ace, and by the way, the Space Ace, the Space Ace and all the other video games that are there are provided by a company called Blast from the Past, and Blast from the Past, really nice guys. They actually make cabinets at your beck and call. If you say, I want a Cherry Miss Pac-Man, they will build you a Miss Pac-Man with new decals, with everything, cherry condition for a certain price. Granted, they're a little pricey, but when you get the machine, it's not beat up. It's not an old operator machine. It's not an old route machine. This is totally cherry, guaranteed, and these guys do great work. I think their website's blastfromthepast.com, but check out, look at the Retro Gaming Radio site. I'll have links to all these guys. Anyway, the Space Ace machine had an upgraded ROM set. And those of you who know about Space Ace know there's 3 levels of play. Each one has a few more scenes than the other one, but they're always sequential. If you've played Cadet level, it's always the same scene after the same scene after the same scene. But in the new ROMs, they mix and match the scenes. So it's not just the same scenes. You play the same number, but you play different ones. Totally threw me off. I thought I was losing my mind. The Blast from the Past guy says, yeah, they're enhanced ROMs, and I thought that was kind of cool. Now, Tech TV, which a lot of you may have seen my poor ugly mug on, was doing interviews. In fact, Brian Smith is the short little black guy that got interviewed. I'm sure you've seen the video. That was Brian Smith, kid height. Great guy, one of my best friends in the world. And of course, I got to say Space Ace for the camera. Great, huh? He gets all the time, I get Space Ace. At the end of day 2, once we were all totally worn out, they gave away prizes for all the tournaments. Good stuff. They got certificates, and they got mention. They got in the Twin Galaxies World Record book, twingalaxies.com. There's your plug, Walter. I got it in there for you. Twin Galaxies records all the world records for video games going back forever. They publish a book every year. I think it's going to be 2 books next year because it's so big. Very cool. Basically, CGE is the E3 for us geeks, for us old classic gaming geeks. Oh, the museum. I forgot to say about the museum. They have a whole area cornered off where you can't touch anything, which is good, because I wouldn't want anybody touching my stuff. Inside this museum were things you've never seen and things you never thought you'd get to see. The original Halcon Laserdisc player, the thing that Rick Dyer made for you to play Dragon's Lair on at home, they made like 100 of these things. There's one in that museum. Revenge of the Jedi cartridges, game cartridges that got printed and never released because they had to change the name. They're in there. Patches, handheld games like those little miniature arcade games. They had all those in there. What else did they have? They had, we're running some pictures while you're watching this. I don't know how well you'll be able to pick them up because this is our first time we're doing the show with this. But inside the museum are tons of this stuff. Vectrex, there's a Vectrex on display. All sorts of cool stuff. The museum alone is worth going to the Classic Gaming Expo. And before I forget about it, the Classic Gaming Expo is at cgexpo.com. And you definitely want to get over there. Buy your tickets now. The show's going to be great next year. We're going to be there. Guaranteed we're going to be in the Classic Gaming Expo. You'll want to be there. Come and hang out with us. Come get a signed Retro Gaming Radio CD. We'll probably give away a bunch of them every day just for promo. And you want to go to the CGE. Plan it on your calendar. If you don't have enough money left after E3, consider canning E3. If you're a classic gamer, CGE is where you want to be. And since we got so much more to cover, I guess I better shut my trap and let's move on to the next segment of the show. This episode, we're going to review a product from Digital Leisure called Time Traveler. And you're thinking to yourself, yeah, I've heard of that. What is that? Time Traveler is the first hologram game. Now, a lot of you remember Sega came out in about 1991 with this big dome white video game, short, and you actually kind of looked into it, and as you played the game, you could see the images on the inside like a hologram. Now, as Popular Science and numerous other magazines of that sort of nature said, this isn't true hologram technology. Well, no, it wasn't. Let's be honest. But it was really cool, and it was something that the arcade people had never seen. Now, Time Traveler was actually a Laserdisc game, just like Dragon's Lair and Space Ace. It was created, in fact, by Space Ace and Dragon's Lair creator Rick Dyer. He also did Thayer's Quest. You may have heard of that. This was the first holographic video game. It was very, very popular. In fact, it grossed over $18 million since it was released. And one of the reasons why it was separated sort of from Dragon's Lair and Space Ace, other than the fact that it was a hologram, was the fact that it was a little less linear. You could choose different time frames, and it was very random how different scenes came up, so you had to kind of stay on your toes. But the gameplay was similar, move to keep the guy flowing in the story the right direction. There were a lot of different little things, like, for instance, you could shoot one guy once, or you could shoot him like 5 times if you knew which guys you could shoot 5 times. And he would die over and over and over and over again, and you'd get more points for it. But what really, I think, made it stand out from the other Laserdisc games at the time was the quality of the production. Now, don't get me wrong, you all know what a great big Don Bluth fan I am, and if you know, Don Bluth created Dragon's Lair and Space Ace, the animation for those games, and it was fantastic, it was beautiful. But they didn't really have a big Hollywood production budget for those games. For Time Traveler, they really went out, they got real actors, they lined them all up, they got them into costumes, they shot on a green screen stage. It was amazing to watch how much production time and effort went in behind Time Traveler. And Time Traveler does have a lot of computer-generated stuff. Usually it's for backgrounds and things like that, special effects. But there's still lots and lots of real human people in there, and it really added sort of a flair to the game. So how does Time Traveler translate to a home product? Well, Time Traveler is on DVD video and DVD-ROM. Those of you who've listened to the Dragon's Lair Special Edition and the Space Ace editions know that there are these two different versions, one of which is designed for your set-top DVD player. Now, that's what I have. I don't believe in DVD-ROMs for your home computer. I'm never going to watch a movie on my TV screen, and there's no software out for DVDs, so why bother? I've got a DVD player for my TV. That's all I need. Now, the DVD-ROM title will, however, play on your DVD ROM drive, and there is actually an advantage in this case. With the players, your set-top players, the DVD video version of these Laserdisc games actually have a little hiccup between moves, which isn't too bad, but it can kind of take a little bit of the magic out of it while it moves there. The DVD video version, which is what we're going to review here today, because like I said, I don't have a DVD-ROM drive, is a reproduction. It's the same game played with your DVD remote. You use your arrows and you use your enter key to actually perform an action, shoot your gun, whatever. Just like in Dragon's Lair Space Ace using the sword or your pistol. So it plays right on your TV. You've got your remote, you're sitting back in your chair, and you're playing Time Traveler right in your comfort of your own home on your TV. Now you're thinking to yourself, now how does the hologram thing fill in here? I mean, the hologram was kind of what made it really cool, the 3D perspective, sort of spatial sort of thing. Well, they thought about that, and included in your Time Traveler jewel case, you will find a pair of 3D glasses. You know, the nice red blue ones you get with comic books? When you put those on and you play the game in 3D mode, it adds a spatial sort of feel to it, so it kind of looks like you're looking into your TV. Does it work really good? Is it the Terminator 3D experience you'll see at Universal Studios? No. Is it a good try and worked within the technology? Sure. Sure, and Digital Leisure should get a good round of applause for at least trying to retain some of the magic of that part of the game. Now, for those of you saying, Time Traveler was just another Dragon's Lair, just another Space Ace, it was all linear, it was all move-based, there wasn't a lot of fun in it. But you're still a die-hard classic gamer, you still need to own this product, and I'll tell you why. Just like Space Ace, just like Dragon's Lair, Digital Leisure has compiled a huge bunch of clips right from Rick Dyer himself, which are behind the scenes, how the machine was built, how it took off in the arcades. They showed TV spots. They have all this cool stuff with the history of Time Traveler, and you get to see behind the scenes. You get to see some of the actors in costume. You get to see all the production stuff going on. So it's fascinating. If nothing else, you'll want this as a diehard collector just to have the historical stuff on it. Now, also, as all the other DVD video products of Digital Leisures, you can just watch the game played all the way through, from front to back. So you don't actually have to play the game. You can just sit and watch. And for those of us who were never very good at Time Traveler to begin with, that's a good thing. So, just to sum up here, Time Traveler from Digital Leisure is the takeoff. It's a beautiful, clean transfer. I don't think I've ever seen it look so good. Even in the arcade, I don't think it looked as good as it is on TV. Very good sound quality. Play the game with your DVD remote or on your computer with your DVD-ROM drive. The game is Time Traveler. You can actually pick it up just about anywhere, like Sam Goody, Warehouse. All of those places actually carry Digital Leisure's DVDs. So you can go down right now and pick up Time Traveler or Dragon's Lair Space Ace and come home and play them right in the comfort of your own home. If nothing else, those of you who are real diehard fans of, say, Rick Dyer, Don Bluth, the whole Laserdisc craze, this is a product you definitely do not want to be without. Yeah, folks, I want to make a quick little plug-in here for Don Bluth. I met Don Bluth, of course, at CGE, and he introduced me to a very, very cool thing that they're doing at his studios, at Don Bluth Studios. It's a magazine every other month called Toon Talk. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking Toon Talk, that's like cartoons and animation and stuff. What does that have to do with classic gaming? Well, Don puts this magazine out every other month. And don't forget, now, Don Bluth is the guy that brought us Dragon's Lair, Space Ace. He also did a lot of great children's shows, and, of course, shows for us like The Secret of Nim and Land Before Time, American Tail, right? You've all heard of this stuff. Don Bluth's the animator. He puts out this absolutely beautiful magazine. This is all in full color. And inside this magazine, he talks about not only animation stuff that animation people would be interested in, like drawing techniques and stuff like that, but for the rest of us, he's got beautiful insights to movies he's done, Space Ace, Dragon's Lair. I'm looking at the magazine right now, and I want to tell you something. It is totally beautiful. The color, the quality, it's very good, high-quality paper. It's got pictures in here, beautiful illustrations, beautiful stills from famous Disney stuff that Don worked on with Gary Goldman. It's beautiful. I can't even begin to tell you. I'm going to put some screenshots up, of course, but you can't appreciate the quality. No one makes magazines like this anymore, okay, folks? This is a dying breed. It's $6 a pop for the magazine. You can get a subscription for, it looks like $30 a year, $35 a year. You want to get in on this, folks. You can go to his website to sign up for this. It's donbluth.com. That was tough, wasn't it? Go to donbluth.com. You can actually get this magazine. Now, something for the classic gamer in here, other than the fact that it's Don Bluth and there's always Dragon's Lair stuff in here, he actually has an ongoing comic strip of Dragon's Lair. You comic people, and don't try to hide. I know you're out there. I know a lot of comic people listen to my show. They actually have a running Dragon's Lair comic strip. The first couple, 2-3 pages are usually in color, and then there's a couple of black and whites. This is a really high-quality magazine, folks. And believe me, go to donbluth.com. Get yourself in on this magazine. He's put out 6 issues. I've seen them all. He's sent me some copies for me to look at and tell you about. Totally beautiful magazine. This is quality stuff. So that's the name of the magazine again. It's called Toon Talk. You can get it at donbluth.com. And take a look at the stills. I'm actually going to probably have some higher quality stills linked off the site, the show's website, so you guys can get a look at this stuff, because you can't really appreciate it, even to see screenshots of it, because the magazine's so high quality. So help out Don. Take a look at the magazine. I think you'll just be blown away by it. I thought it was really neat stuff, so I try to help you guys out. The Dragon's Lair movie. Now, we can't talk a lot about the Dragon's Lair movie. You know how it is. I know too much as it is already. But what I can tell you is the Dragon's Lair movie has a very exciting storyline, and I'm going to talk more about that in a future episode. Don is planning within the next 2 years of having the movie ready to roll for theaters. He said about 22-month window, which is very, 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 very ambitious for what he has to do. It's going to be traditional animation, none of this mixture CGI stuff. This is real Don Bluth stuff, which is going to make a lot of us happy. They're working on getting the original actors to do Daphne and Dirk. It just doesn't quite sound the same without them. And it's going to be a full-length animated motion picture right at the theater. Lots of excitement. Now, the cool thing about it is tied to our last little plug there. Toon Talk, Don Bluth's magazine, donbluth.com. Big fan, you can tell. Inside that magazine, over the coming issues, are going to be first looks at the storyboard and storyline of Dragon's Lair the movie. So if you're all freaked out about Dragon's Lair the movie and you want to get the inside skinny, Toon Talk's the magazine you want to hook up with. We'll talk more about the Dragon's Lair movie in future episodes. Well, folks, I think we're going to have to wrap it up. The show has already ran a lot longer than I planned to, but I got all excited talking about CGE. What's coming in the future? More product reviews. We've got tons of products to look at. We're going to have more previews, things like Dragon's Lair 3D. We're going to show you guys more goodies about that. We're going to talk about some of the more up-and-coming things like Intellivision Rocks, the new Intellivision emulator coming out, which is going to totally rock because it's in Windows finally. It's not DOS-based. We love that. And we're going to have more interviews. We've got exciting interviews coming, believe you me. Next show, we are going to interview godfather of 8-bit gaming, Paul Norman. Remember, I've been talking about Paul Norman since I started this radio show. Paul Norman created Forbidden Forest for the Commodore 64, Aztec Challenge, Super Huey, all names you know and love, games that have set the pace for modern gaming. Paul Norman will be right here on the show. It's a very exciting interview. I think you're going to really love it. And we're going to start getting some exclusives. Retro Gaming Radio is getting into a market where we can actually start getting a couple of exclusives every now and then to bring you that no one else knows about. Before I sign off, I do want to thank a few people that have made this show possible. Brian Smith, my co-producer, who created that kick-butt intro song that you heard. He's also going to be a regular here working with me on Retro Gaming Radio. You'll meet him in the future as well. I want to thank speedhost.com for providing us with the much-needed bandwidth to supply you with this show. The VG Network, vg-network.com, for providing us with mirror sites. You guys have gone above and beyond to make this show possible, and we really appreciate it. And I want to thank you, the listeners, both old and new, for listening to the show, because without you guys writing me every other day saying, Shane, bring the show back, Shane, we love the show, you know, Shane, come back, Shane. Ha, you didn't think I was going to get it in here this episode, did you? Without you guys, I wouldn't have a show, and I wouldn't have the fans. I actually had a fan come up to me and shake my hand at CG, and I'll tell you what, that made the whole trip, as exciting as it was, even better. So I really want to thank you guys for tuning in and listening. Quick plug, if you want to listen to the old retro radio shows, retro gaming radio shows, we do have a commemorative CD-ROM, has all the episodes up until now on the CD with a nice interface. You can see it there on the site under Buy the CD link. It's $15, folks. It basically covers me, you know, burning the CD, printing a jewel case, and mailing it to you. Well, folks, I'm going to sign off. This is Shane R. Monroe from Retro Gaming Radio, and until next episode, keep it retro.